I'm a journalist with more than 25 years experience. That's included time on local papers, decade at the Guardian Media Group, and some years with the Google News Initiative as well. But these days, I'm dedicating my time to environment reporting as a freelance and on my own publication, The Northern Eco. In terms of what we're going to do today, I'm a certified now carbon literacy facilitator, which is a qualification I've done so I can help other journalists with their knowledge of the climate and the emergency that we do all face. During today's talk, there are some links and some QR codes with more information if you're interested to follow up. But don't worry if you miss any of those, because I'm going to make the slides available after the training as well. We're kind of together for about 20 minutes. I'd welcome questions. The first part of this talk really is kind of like put it into context a little bit. But then I'll give you 5 things that you can take back to your newsrooms to help you spot greenwashing as well. And let's say, please ask any questions you want to. So next slide, please. Thought we'd better have a definition for greenwashing. When I told my mother-in-law I was doing this talk, she said, oh, well, I think we're okay, but apart from when we do the tumble dryer. And I realized that perhaps the word isn't in that common usage across all people. So greenwashing, what it is, an attempt to make people believe that a company is doing more to protect the environment than it actually is. Nice, simple definition. And obviously that's pretty much a barrier to any sort of real sustainability. Nice and simple, but then if we go to the next slide, actually greenwashing comes in many flavors. And these are 6 of the main current ones, but things that are evolving all the time, and there's some examples of new ones. I'll pick out a couple that you might not be as familiar with. Green shifting, when an organization implies that it's our fault, the consumer's fault, and shifts the blame away from themselves. And green rinsing, I think we can all imagine examples of this, when an organization regularly changes its targets before they're achieved. So you never really know whether they've hit something or not hit something. And I was intrigued to see this green hushing that 1 in 4 British companies have admitted being engaged in. And that's just hiding the sustainability credentials in order to evade further scrutiny. So a little bit more complex than it at first appears, but yeah, lots of different types of greenwashing that we're going to look at today. So next slide. Who cares about this? In the UK, the sort of regulation around it, I suppose, is set by the Competition and Markets Authority. And they've developed something called the Green Claims Code, which sets out 6 points for businesses to check. And we're going to quickly play a video which goes over those 6 points. And I would just say, this is what our business customers, our business stories, our advertisers are tasked with doing. But it's also what we're tasked with doing as news businesses. And I wonder how many people are really familiar with these 6 key points. So we'll just run through them now. Away from kind of consumer things, what's this look like for us in the news space, and why should we care about it? I've looked back and found that mentions of greenwashing and the related terms have increased and are increasing. Back in 2022, they increased by 2/3 over the course of that year. And I think the most worrying point for me is this one, that less than 1/4 of the public say they take sustainability claims at face value. That plays right into our problem with trust with audiences. If less than 1/4 of people actually believe what we're writing about environmental issues, we've got a serious problem. And hopefully by addressing things like greenwashing, we can get some credibility back in the space. So I'm going to give you 3 examples now of some journalism that's been looking at this issue. As Boris just went through it's fine, you can move on. As Boris went through in that fantastic first panel, these investigations and these works take months to come together. And this particular example is actually part of the Climate Journalism Award that was announced earlier this month. If you haven't had a chance to read this, I really would recommend it. But it's an extremely in-depth look at the way the financial markets market financial products. And so it probably is something that we're not that familiar with, but all financial products are given ratings as to their environmental credentials. And this investigation looked at the funds that are marked as planet-saving funds and found that a lot of them were actually invested in fossil fuel companies. This is kind of greenwashing at a systemic global kind of issue that took these two journalists absolutely months of investigations. Now, on a day-to-day through our newsrooms, we're probably not going to be faced as much with this sort of thing as we are with sort of careless, if you like, greenwashing of lack of use of proper terms or sort of loose language. But have a look at this and yeah, see this sort of major investigation. Familiar names like BlackRock, JP Morgan Chase, HSBC that have all been wrongly labeling their products to appear more environmentally friendly. Next slide. I've included this in because obviously we shouldn't forget about our advertisers. And Dove, an advertiser I think we're probably all aware of, that's symbolized by female empowerment and body image and, you know, good things about the whole environment. But the problem that Dove's had is its claims about the recyclable plastic it uses. They've been subjected to a Greenpeace investigation for a long time now. It's still ongoing because of the harm that their single-use plastics has been doing around the world. And the third example on the next slide, I thought I'd include this because this is an example of sort of emerging potential new type of greenwashing, nature positive washing. This FT article from last week has found that corporates are now kind of setting goals around their biodiversity. Biodiversity being the other part of the climate change kind of conundrum. The more the climate heats, the worse biodiversity gets, and the worse biodiversity gets, the more the climate heats, and it's a sort of ongoing cycle. But when it comes to sort of washing, then setting targets for nature is a lot looser and sort of generally sounds nice than counting metric volumes of carbon, which is much more measurable. So they've spotted a trend in that corporates are now much more likely to talk about their nature positive products. You can already have nature positive investments, book a nature positive holiday, and even buy a nature positive coffee. But what that actually means is so loose, it's fairly meaningless. So watch out for the new nature positive washing when we're looking at greenwashing. So 5 things that you can sort of practically do. Most people in the room are probably kind of words people and know words are important and words matter. Probably one of the biggest risks to us in a day-to-day is sort of loose language or using language that you don't fully understand or might have kind of heard of, or people put in press releases. I'm looking into this. I've seen some howlers in like local and regional journalism in the past couple of weeks, which I don't think were meant with any kind of intentional sort of intention to mislead, but they're just kind of sloppy use of words, if you like. So words matter. The slide here is obviously showing you lots of different words that you may have come across or may have heard about, but perhaps their full meaning isn't known. It's one of the problems, I think, of reporting in this area. There is some technical and some scientific based language that, you know, our audiences aren't going to be that familiar with as well. And so explaining them can lead to problems of kind of bringing in extra vagueness as well. a simple example, you know, if a product is labeled natural, that doesn't mean it's kind of safe or in any way environmentally friendly. So I found this kind of glossary of terms, I suppose, at this link, which I thought was kind of usable and nice to sort of refer back to. As I say, the links I will include with the slides after this. Let's move on to numbers, sexy numbers. Now, I should introduce this slide by first of all saying I'm not an advocate for carbon capture. If anybody wants to talk to me about carbon capture after this presentation, you're very welcome, but I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of carbon capture during it. It's very complex and very contested. But I chose this story because I thought a lot of people in the room would be familiar with it. It was an announcement from the government 10 days or so ago about big money, 22 billion for carbon capture. And in their briefing paper, this is what they said. It'd be a boost for economic growth. It will protect the environment. It create 4,000 new jobs. It will sustain British industry. It will help remove 8.5 million tons of carbon emissions each year, the equivalent of 4 million cars off the road. Now, the 4,000 new jobs that it's going to claim, actually, some of those are supposed to be on the patch that I cover. And so this is quite a difficult story in a way, because it looks like great news on one side. And surely 8.5 million tons of carbon emissions being removed is a fantastic thing. But it's one of those examples where the numbers are kind of blinding you to the story, if you like, as well, or they're not helping the context of the story, probably, to be more accurate. So I thought it'd be helpful to look at that 8.5 million tons of carbon and see what it means. So next slide, please. So if we're going to look at 8.5 million tons, what does a 1 ton look like? I mean, who has any idea of what 1 ton of CO2 would look like? So if you blow up a big balloon, you can see the size of the person with it. That's 1 ton. So if 8.5 million tons sounds like mega, I was almost tempted to put this into AI and see if they could come up with an 8.5 million tons of balloons. But anyway, so you can get the idea. If that's 1 ton, 8.5 million tons sounds fantastic. 8.5 million tons in a balloon is a bit of a hard concept to get your head around, perhaps. So if we look at 1 ton, so that big balloon, and what it means for like normal things that people would be familiar with, it's okay. We're looking at 10 kilograms of beef, 3,300 miles in a car, just one of these things, not all three together, or 3 return flights from London to Glasgow. They'd be the equivalent of that big balloon. So this 8.5 million tons is looking pretty big, isn't it? I mean, it sounds like Ed Miliband's cracked it. Great. Next slide. So 8.5 million tons. I don't know whether any of you did a carbon calculator on your way here. If you did, you might know that if we can have next click, that you and me and everybody else around here, the average of our output every year is 12.7 tons of carbon. 8.5 million still sounding good. But the UK as a whole emits 840 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. And the next point, globally, 36.8 billion tons per year. Okay, not so good. And finally, on carbon capture, we're looking really, because we have I mean, 36.8 billion tons a year to worry about. We just get like 0.1% of global emissions. So still a good story, but perhaps not the absolute lifesaver that we might have first thought it was. And that's just a bit of a warning about sexy numbers. Numbers are there, they're not greenwashing, they are right, but they also can lead us into a trap of a certain way of thinking about a story. So next slide, please. Yeah, third point, I mean, everybody's got contacts. We need to really get expert contacts when we're covering these stories. as well as local universities. Campaigners such as Greenpeace, when working with Francois and this group in the past, you know, we've had Greenpeace in to talk to us from their media department. They're really helpful and have experts on hand and more than happy to help with any sort of inquiries that people have about actual things. Local activists, Friends of the Earth, I mean, they don't just hold coffee mornings, they do actually have some expertise within their groups that's worth looking at. And on that topic, Extinction Rebellion aren't just people that glue themselves to the road. They do have a branch called Extinction Rebellion for Scientists, which have members that are worth talking to if you need to check factual scientific things. And then the final link there I've included is from Covering Climate Now, which is mostly American based, but it's got some great journalism resources, including links to further expertise, you know, if you've got a specific sort of issue that you're not aware of, like carbon capture or something like that. So next slide. The fourth thing I would say is that climate is now everybody's business. It's not like a specialist beat. It's not kind of the guy or girl in the corner that, you know, has some sort of science background and they need to get on with it. Some fantastic climate stories in sport. Sport's one of the biggest emitters of carbon and is actually taking it extremely seriously. All football clubs are taking this extremely seriously. There's a mine of good stories. Business is fairly more obvious as to where the stories might come from, but really climate now covers all things. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about when we first had like digital desks in newsrooms, and they were like separate desks with special people who sat at them, or they even, like in my case, when I worked in a newsroom, a separate building for the digital department. Let's not make that mistake again. We shouldn't be pigeonholing climate as a thing that you need to become a specialist at. We need to make sure it's spread across the whole newsroom expertise. And finally, number 5, further reading. So I'd recommend both those books, but I've also got a little gift for you there. It's quite a small book. I've got it on my desk here, but it is a really useful little download and something just to refer back to in your day-to-day. A lot of the figures that are in this presentation actually came from those books. And just to end, as Francois mentioned earlier, I'm up for doing training for people, either on online courses or in your newsrooms. So please feel free to get in touch with me. There's details there about the course. As Francois said, I'm a facilitator. That means I'm qualified to do trainings, and I have the course, the only UK course for journalists in carbon literacy. So I'm hoping to train lots of people and make sure that this very important subject gets the attention it deserves in the newsroom. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.